Have you ever felt like something deep within you is trying to be remembered, but the noise of life keeps drowning it out? What if today's episode is the key that unlocks that hidden memory? Hey everyone, before we dive in, if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. You're listening to 369 Knowledge. This is a solo segment of my original podcast, Beyond the Frequency 369, where it's just me, speaking directly to you. One idea, one moment, a deeper look within. No guests, no interviews. Just raw reflection and insight meant to awaken something ancient and powerful within you. So let's begin. What if I told you that everything you know is just the beginning? Beyond the veil of the ordinary lies a realm of hidden knowledge, ancient wisdom, and untapped potential. A place where consciousness expands, reality bends, and the impossible becomes possible. You weren't meant to stay asleep. You were meant to awaken. Open your mind, remember who you truly are, and step with me beyond the frequency 369. Hey, before you start the episode, if you're on YouTube or Rumble, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. You want to make a comment? Go for it. It's America. If you catch me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit me with those 5 stars. I appreciate the support. Let's start the show. I want to take you on a journey inward. We're going to explore something that's been always on my mind, and pretty much the premise of what my podcast is all about. Remembering who you truly are beneath all the layers that life has placed upon us. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's dive into this space of remembrance together. You know, I always think about how we move through this world and how much of what we consider to be us is actually just programming. Think about it for a moment. From the time we're born, we're conditioned to accept certain truths about ourselves and about reality. We're taught to identify with our bodies, our minds, our personal histories, and roles in society. But what if that's not really who we are? What if all of that is just a temporary experience we're having? See, I believe, and I've come to understand, that we are eternal souls having a human experience, not humans having an occasional spiritual moment. We've just forgotten. We've been away from our true home for so long that we've completely identified with this physical construct. Throughout my research, I have come to a profound understanding that's really shifted my perspective. We are here to experience what we are not. Let that sink in for a second. We are infinite beings choosing to experience limitation. We are boundless consciousness choosing to experience separation. Why would we do this? Perhaps because the only way for the infinite to know itself is to temporarily forget its true nature. To forget it's limitless. It's like how you don't truly appreciate sight until you've experienced darkness. The physical realm, with all its challenges and restrictions, is the perfect playground for our eternal souls to have experiences that wouldn't be possible otherwise. The pain, the joy, the struggles, the victories, they're all part of the grand exploration of what it means to be human when our true nature is so much more. And you know what's fascinating? Those moments when we catch a glimpse of our expanded self through meditation, through deep connection with others, through those inexplicable synchronicities. Those are moments of remembrance. Those are moments when the veil thins and we recall, even if it's just for a second, who we truly are before the world convinces us otherwise. Let's talk about reality for a moment. What if what you perceive as solid and real is actually more like a dream? I mean, think about it. We're navigating through life believing that what we see, touch, and experience is the whole picture. but it's just a tiny fraction of what's actually happening. Our brains are constantly filtering incoming information, deciding what's important enough for us to consciously perceive. We're literally constructing our reality moment by moment. And this construction, this mental model we create, often becomes our prison. We walk around these invisible boundaries we've accepted without question. This is possible. That isn't. This is real. That's imagination. But who decides these boundaries? And what might exist beyond them? I've come to understand that questioning these constructs is actually the key to remembering our expanded self, our true nature. When you start pulling on those threads of reality, asking, why do I believe this? Is this actually true? Something remarkable happens. It's almost like waking up within a dream and suddenly realizing that you can fly. These dormant abilities we all possess, intuition, inner knowing, the capacity to perceive beyond the physical, they begin to activate when we stop accepting the limited version of reality we've been handed. You know, there's a reason why children see things adults can't. They haven't yet been fully conditioned to ignore what exists beyond the veil of conventional reality. They haven't learned to dismiss their innate wisdom, their connection to something larger. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you start questioning your reality, you create spaces in your awareness, cracks in the construct. And through those cracks, light begins to shine through. New possibilities emerge, deeper truths about your existence become accessible. This isn't about rejecting the physical world. It's about expanding beyond its limitations. It's about remembering that you are not just a body moving through space and time, but consciousness itself experiencing form. And when you truly grasp this, when you feel it in your bones, reality becomes more like clay in your hands rather than concrete beneath your feet. There's something profound about fear that I've been contemplating for a long time. Have you ever noticed that fear seems to have this grip on so many aspects of our lives? I've been wondering where this fear actually comes from. There's this beautiful teaching that says, you have been away far too long and have forgotten your home. This is why you fear. That hits me right in the soul every time when I think about it. Because what if our fear isn't actually about the things we think it's about? When we forget where we come from, our true origin as an infinite consciousness, we start to identify solely with this temporary physical experience. We forget that we're eternal. And in that forgetting, fear finds its foothold. Think about it this way. If you truly knew beyond any doubt that you were an eternal being just having a temporary physical experience, would you fear death? Would you fear failure? Would you fear judgment from others? This amnesia we experience, this forgetting of our true home, it's like being dropped into a foreign country with no memory of where you came from or who you really are. Of course you'd be afraid. You'd cling to whatever seemed familiar or safe. You create identities and stories to make sense of your existence. And that's exactly what we do in our daily lives. We build these elaborate structures of identity. We say, I am this job, I am this role, I am these achievements, I am these failures. We define ourselves by our relationships, our possessions, our social status. But these are just temporary costumes we're wearing. The fear we feel when these costumes are threatened, when we face loss or change or uncertainty, it's actually homesickness. It's the discomfort of being disconnected from our true essence. I believe that every spiritual practice, every meditation, every moment of genuine connection with another being They're all glimpses of remembering. They're moments when the veil thins and we catch a fleeting sense of that home we've forgotten. And in those moments, notice how fear dissolves and goes away. It's not that we become fearless superheroes. It's that we remember there was never anything to fear in the first place. Let me share something with you that might sound a bit unconventional. I've been exploring the concept of out-of-body experiences lately, actually for a little while now. It's opened up some fascinating doorways in my understanding of what consciousness truly is. Think about it. We're so conditioned to believe that we are these physical bodies, right? That this flesh and bone is the totality of who we are. But what if, and stay with me here, what if your awareness, your consciousness, can actually separate from your physical form? Out-of-body experiences aren't just some fringe concept. They're documented across cultures throughout human history, and they all point to the same revelation, that consciousness isn't confined to our brains or our bodies. When you experience being outside your physical form, something profound happens. The boundaries you thought were fixed suddenly become flexible. You realize that what you are, your essence, extends far beyond this temporary physical vehicle. It's like discovering you've been living in just one room of a vast mansion. These experiences reveal layers of reality that our physical sense simply cannot detect. Imagine being able to perceive beyond the limited spectrum of light that our eyes can see, or hear frequencies outside our normal range. That's what happens when consciousness expands beyond the body. Suddenly, there's so much more available to you. What's particularly fascinating is how these experiences tend to dissolve our fears and limitations. When you directly experience yourself as more than a body, the fear of death often transforms. Not because you're escaping reality, but because you're accessing a more complete picture of it. And here's where it gets really interesting. These experiences aren't meant to be some rare mystical achievement for only a selected few. They're actually natural abilities that have gone dormant in most of us. Like muscles that have atrophied from lack of use. Through deliberate practice, by questioning the nature of our consciousness, these dormant abilities can be awakened. We can learn to navigate these expanded states of awareness and bring back insights that transform how we live in our everyday reality. The question becomes, if you could access these deeper realms of consciousness, if you could directly experience your expanded self, how would you change the way you live your physical world? What fears would you dissolve? What possibilities might open up? Now, let's talk about something that fascinates me. The dormant abilities that lie within each of us. We're walking around with these incredible capacities that most of us never tap into. Think about it like this. We're born with certain inherent abilities that go far beyond what we typically use in our day-to-day lives. But somewhere along the way, we forget. The world tells us what's possible and what isn't, and we start to believe it. I've come to understand that awakening to our true nature isn't just some spiritual concept. It's a practical reality with tangible effects. When we begin to remember who we truly are, we naturally start to access abilities that were always there, just dormant. It's like we've been operating on a limited bandwidth. We've been taught to focus only on the physical, the material, what we can see and touch. But our consciousness is capable of so much more. The ability to perceive beyond our five senses, to access information beyond time and space, to heal ourselves and others. These aren't superhuman powers. They're our birthright. What's really interesting is that as you start to question the nature of reality and who you really are, these abilities begin to surface naturally. It's not about forcing or straining. It's about removing the blocks, the conditioning, the limitations that were never truly yours to begin with. I've witnessed people transform their entire reality once they begin this awakening process. Physical ailments that wouldn't respond to treatment suddenly shift. Chronic emotional patterns dissolve. Synchronicities and meaningful coincidences become everyday occurrences. It's as if the universe starts speaking to you in a language you suddenly remember how to understand. And here's what's profound. These abilities aren't separate from you. They're not something you need to achieve or earn. They're inherent aspects of your expanded self that are simply waiting to be remembered. The veil between who you think you are and who you truly are is much thinner than most people realize. So here's what I'm doing, folks. I wanted to invite you to consider something. What parts of yourself might be waiting to be awakened? What abilities lie dormant within you, just beneath the surface of your awareness? The journey of remembering isn't always easy, but it is absolutely worth it. Because when you awaken to your true nature, you don't just transform your own experience, you help lift the collective consciousness of us all. What I've been discussing naturally leads us to what some traditions call the great work. This isn't just some lofty spiritual concept. It's the actual process of awakening consciousness and remembering our true nature. It's perhaps the most important work we can undertake in this lifetime. The great work is about empowering ourselves to awaken to our eternal soul, to remember who we really are and where we come from. And when I say where we come from, I'm not talking about your hometown or even your ancestry in the physical realm. I'm talking about something much deeper, something that exists beyond the physical construct we've come to accept as the totality of reality. This work of awakening operates on two levels simultaneously. On one hand, it's deeply personal, a journey that only you can take. No one else can remember for you. No one else can awaken for you. The path of remembrance requires your willingness to question everything you've been taught about reality, about yourself, and about what's possible. But here's what's fascinating. This work isn't just individual. It's also collective. As each of us remembers who we truly are, we create ripples in the collective consciousness. We shift the field. We make it easier for others to remember too. There's this beautiful synergy where your personal awakening contributes to the awakening of all. I sometimes think about it like this. Imagine humanity has been in a state of collective amnesia. We've forgotten our true home, our true capabilities, our true essence. And this forgetting, this is what creates so much of our suffering, our fear, our sense of separation from each other and from the whole. The great work is about reversing this amnesia, both personally and collectively. It's about remembering that we are not just physical beings having occasional spiritual experiences, but spiritual beings having a temporary physical experience. This remembrance changes everything. How we relate to ourselves, to each other, to the world around us. And perhaps, most importantly, as we do this work of awakening, we naturally begin to help others do the same. Not through preaching or trying to convince, but through the natural radiation of our own remembrance. When you remember who you truly are, you become like a lighthouse for others still lost in the fog of forgetting. Your very presence reminds them of something they've known all along, but somehow lost sight of it. I want to challenge you now to really examine the nature of what you're perceiving as reality. What if, and just stay with me here, what if everything you think you know about yourself and the world around you is based on a limited perception? What if there's more? So much more beyond what your physical senses are showing you. We're taught from early age to trust our five senses, to believe that What we can see, touch, hear, smell, and taste constitutes the entirety of our reality. But what if that's just a surface level? What if our senses are actually filtering out far more information that we're letting in? Think about it for a moment. Science tells us that we're only perceiving a tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum, that there are sounds too high or too low for us to hear, that there's an entire universe of activity happening at quantum levels that we can directly observe. So I'm asking you to just consider, that maybe your perception of reality isn't the complete picture. Maybe it's more like you're watching a movie on a screen, fully absorbed in the story, but forgetting that you're actually sitting in a theater. What happens when you start to pull back the curtain on your conditioned beliefs? When you begin to question not just what you think, but how you think. This isn't about replacing one's belief system with another. It's about creating space between you and your thoughts. Recognizing that you are not your beliefs. You are the awareness behind them. When you start questioning your reality, really questioning it, something profound happens. You begin to notice the gaps in the narrative, the inconsistencies in what you've been told about yourself and the world. You start to catch a glimpse of something beyond the construct. And this questioning isn't meant to create chaos or uncertainty in your life. It's actually the doorway to a deeper knowing. A knowing that doesn't come from external authority or secondhand information, but from direct experience. From that part of you that has always known the truth, but has been covered over and over by layers of conditioning. Every time you pause and ask yourself, is this really true? Is this all there is? You're creating a crack in the edifice of limitation. You're creating an opening for something new to emerge, for your true self to shine through. All right, folks. So as we draw our conversation, almost to a close, we're going to wrap things up. I want to take a moment to reflect on what we've explored together. We've been discussing this profound idea that each of us has a true nature, an expanded self that exists beyond the identity we've constructed over time. Remember that you came into this world as pure consciousness, unattained by limited beliefs or societal expectations. Over time, the world convinced you that you were smaller than you actually are, that you were separate, that you were defined by the achievements, your appearances, your relationships. But what if all of that was just temporary clothing for our eternal soul? What if you are and have always been so much more than what you've been conditioned to believe? The journey of remembering who you truly are isn't about adding something new. It's about stripping away what isn't authentic. It's about peeling back the layers of conditioning until you recognize yourself again. This process of awakening, of remembering, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual unfolding, a series of moments where you catch a glimpse of your expanded self. Maybe during meditation or in a nature walk or in those quiet moments between thoughts where you sense something vast and peaceful at your core. Start questioning one assumption today, just one belief about yourself or reality that you've never examined. Hold it up to the light and ask, is this actually true? Or is this something I was taught to believe? The path to self-discovery begins with these small moments of inquiry, with the willingness to sit with uncertainty rather than clinging to comforting illusions, with the courage to recognize that perhaps the world isn't exactly as you've been told it is. Your true self, your expanded self, has been patiently waiting for you to remember. It's not something you need to search for outside of yourself. It's what remains when you let go of everything you are not. In the silence between your thoughts, in the awareness that witnesses your experiences, that's where you'll find yourself waiting. That's where remembrance begins. Well, as we wrap up another episode of 369 Knowledge, I want to thank you for joining me today on this journey of remembrance and self-discovery. It means everything to me that you take time out of your day to listen and contemplate these ideas with me. If you found value in today's episode, or maybe something in this episode triggered a remembrance in your soul, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to like, subscribe, or maybe even leave a rating or review wherever you get your podcasts. It helps people find this conversation, this podcast, these topics, and it spreads these conversations that I believe are so essential for our collective awakening. And again, if something in today's episode resonated with you or sparked a question, reach out, share your thoughts, your experiences. This journey is one that we're all taking together. And as always, I want to leave you with this. I love you. I see you. I hear you. I am you. Continue to ask questions. Don't be afraid to pull back the curtain and take a deeper look. Push forward, always reaching beyond the frequency.